One. Minutes. Probably the last call of the top.
Oh, you can start.
Okay. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. It's amazing to welcome you to this panel. It is panel session 1L. The general title of the panel is multinational corporations and the economy of Lagos State. I think this is one of the two panels for this call. On this panel, my name is Boge Faruq. I am sharing this panel. I am of Lagos State University. Other members of the panel, we have Felix Abijoro. I think it's on its way, starting on the multinational corporations to Lagos State, a historical analysis. Secondly, we have Oluwambe Akimoyi. I don't think he's here with us physically here, and he's presenting on the Lagos textile industry in transition, multinational companies and local industrial groups. After that, we also have myself. I'll also be presenting. I'm presenting on the Chinese textile companies in Nigeria, Nike Industries Limited, Lagos State, 1971 to 2020. Apart from that, we also have Omalara Messi Ebifemi. I think she's also here with us, and she will be presenting on British multinationals in Nigeria's pharmaceutical industry, made at Baker Nigeria PLC in history. Also, we have Sylvester Osamoyi Omorobi, who is also presenting a paper on John O's PLC Nigeria and the Nigerian electrical engineering industry, a historical analysis. That is the 5 panel member that we have. So we just had the presentation one after the other. Abilo is not here now. Maybe I'll just take that opportunity to do my own presentation. Then maybe when it comes around, we now take its own presentation. The modality of presentation, of course, since we have just about 3 presenters present, 2 of them are not here already. We are not certain if they are going to come. Not so. We give 15 minutes for the first presentation. Then we do all the presentations while they are presenting. At the panel attendants and take note of the reactions coming to the so I can take note of all the reactions and the comments. The subscribing will now throw our comments or our observation and reactions to them and the response to us. And Mr. Felix Abijoro, we have mentioned you, so we are expecting you to do your presentation now because you are the first on the list. You are the first person to send. So you may come around there just to my first on the round. Good morning. My name is Felix Abijoro from the Department of History and International Studies, Lagos State University. I am presenting a paper titled Multinational Corporations in Lagos State, a historical analysis. Now, Lagos is the economic net center of Nigeria. It is also a state located within the southwestern part of Nigeria. As a state, it houses
lots of multinational corporations, a lot of business entities, multinational companies are all domiciled in Lagos. There's hardly any multinational company that does not have its headquarters domiciled in Lagos. And so Lagos is actually the center of excellence. Now, how did it all begin? At what point the multinational corporations, emerged in Lagos? Now, at the beginning, Lagos basically was an agrarian society. The fertile nature of the soil actually encouraged farming, and so the people of Lagos were extensively into farming, producing crops such as cassava, yams, and several other commodities. They were also into fishing. Why? Because the coastal nature of the environment also encouraged fishing, and so extensively they were also into fishing, and fishing was extensively carried out as an activity in Lagos. And then, of course, trade was also one of the key activities that actually characterized early Lagos before the emergence of multinational corporations. So we had trade, there were, since it was a coastal entity, we had neighbors and foreigners alike, Brazilians, Cubans, and Portuguese, all transacting business and doing business in Lagos. Lagos was an economic hub. Was a busy center in terms of economy. People came in, the place was, lively in terms of business activities. But of course, in terms of multinational manufacturing industries, it was probably the early 90s that we started, having multinational corporations being established in Lagos. For instance, in 1859, the Lagos Oil Mills were established. And then by 1865, we had the brick kilns, and then of course, we also had the public slaughterhouse. These were the early industries in Lagos. But of course, we at the Badagry area like Tofu and all that, we had coconut fiber industries as well within the period under review. And so at the initial time, these industries were there. But in terms of multinational corporations, it began when Lagos, when what we refer to as industrial estates were not being created in Lagos. And so we had industrial estates in different parts of Lagos, and these industries were encouraged. They were now setting up their factories in these estates, Ikeja, Gomu, Agbaran, several other industrial estates. In 1926, for instance, several bottling company was established. And then, of course, we had the Coca-Cola, the Guinness, and several other companies, multinationals that now came out were all domiciled in Lagos. So that's basically how it evolved over time. Now, the creation of industrial estates actually encouraged the evolution or the establishment of multinational corporations within Lagos from the 1950s up to the time we get independence and beyond. So, like I mentioned, we had Guinness and several other companies, Nigerian bottling company. We had the 7-Ups and so on that were all established within that period after the industrial estates were created. Now, having established it, these industrial, these multinational MNCs has contributed significantly to the growth and, of course, the expansion of Lagos in several ways. And that's we're looking at the impact of these industries. Number one, we're looking at the impact of MNCs with vis-a-vis the populace. Now, the existence of MNCs in Lagos has engendered the creation of jobs. And so that they are existing in Lagos created jobs for the people, created for the youth, created for the unemployed. And so the MNC in terms of impact for the people has created jobs. It has also helped, the growth of SMEs. A lot of these establishments actually have small businesses doing supplies. carrying out transactions with them, and these have helped their businesses to grow as well. And then apart from that, they have also engaged in community development. A lot of these MNCs, they have various projects they have embarked upon in different areas. For instance, provision of bottled water in some communities, provision of tie the road within the environment where they are domiciled, and then lots of other areas. And then they also provide scholarships as well, especially in the area of education. We have lots of these MNCs that are giving scholarships to students, both from the secondary down to the tertiary. They are giving such scholarships. Then of course, on the part of the government, in terms of impact, we have also seen that the MNCs have contributed significantly, to the revenue base of the state in terms of taxes, in terms of royalties, and so on. So through these taxes and royalties, the revenue base of the state expanded, and the government is thus enabled to do what? To establish, to carry out their functions in terms of basic infrastructures and meeting the basic demands of the populace or the citizens of the state. And then, of course, we also see them embark on the provision of certain basic infrastructure as well for their partners. So areas where they are domiciled, they also ensure that basic infrastructure, those areas are well, up to date in those localities. Now, looking at the terms of impact and negative impact of, MNCs, really, in Lagos, because having been established, say the positive impact, they also have the negative dimensions of their existence in Lagos. And what are these? For instance, look at the area of pollution. Pollution is one area that is, where MNCs are negatively impacting on the environment. Pollution, both air, land, and to be exploitative in their operations, especially vis-a-vis casualization. They employ a lot of workers, a lot of staff on a temporary basis without adequate compensation or benefits. In most times, just for this category of staff, they are laid off without being compensated. And that pervades almost all the MNCs in Lagos. In fact, recently, I think about a week ago, we had issues of one of the multinational corporations where there was protest and all that these have been looking at the issues of exploitation. So in terms of financial exploitation, it's been a negative impact, really, with regard to the operations around the Lagos Palace. Now, what are the challenges that these MNCs have faced all through the period of their existence? What are some of the challenges? One, erratic power supply. Due to the power issue we have as a nation, most of these MNCs have not been able to operate, vis-a-vis their full capacity. As a matter of fact, a lot of them are either shut down or relocated to neighboring countries where their power is perceived to be stable. Our neighbors have, accommodated a lot of these companies. Dunlop and some of these companies that used to be in Lagos, they are all relocated and all that. Why? Because of issues of challenges of power. Another, challenge is the bad roads that we have in Lagos State. These has negatively impacted on their operations. In fact, the nature of the roads we have oftentimes create congestion and delays. This congestion creates delays in terms of moving from one location to another, delivering goods and their products. And of course, it's also, added to the cost of maintenance of their vehicles because the roads are bad. And as a result, you have, them contending with high cost of maintenance. And this, it dips into their profits as well. And then, of course, we also have, as one of the challenges, government regulations and policies. The Lagos environment of Nigeria as a whole has been operating under a very harsh economic environment. And this has actually discouraged a lot of the MNCs. We have had issues of a lot of them either relocating or shutting down or making adjustments just to survive, just to make sure that they stay afloat and keep doing business. And then also they also grapple with issues of corruption. Issues of corruption. Sometimes obtaining licenses and so on. These processes, could be deliberately perverted in order to want to satisfy, personal gains. And so you have these MNCs that have continually experienced such, issues of corruption, making it difficult for them to obtain licenses, making it difficult for them to actually operate. Another issue, another challenge is the contending with the issue of kidnapping and security. In fact, that's a very bullet issue even right now within Lagos and beyond. We have issues of insecurity and so on. Most of these MNCs, the operators are foreigners, and so they are easy target for kidnappers. And this, has created fear in them, so that a lot of them are either contemplating leaving or they are even there. A lot of these, expatriates now, they are pretty scared of operating within the environment due to the issues of insecurity. And then, what are the results? The result is that, a lot of these challenges are either engendered, then closing and shutting down completely, or relocating, or making adjustments to stay afloat and, keep doing business within the Lagos environment. So conclusively, from looking at the trajectory, we see that at the beginning, Lagos wasn't just an entity housing multinational corporations. The MNCs came as a result of the location and several other factors that encouraged their existence in Lagos. Especially Lagos was a market. Why? Because it always had population because of the location. And so a lot of them established, but having been established over the years, their existence has been plagued by different issues, different challenges. Their impact have also been felt in different areas. So what that implies is that why Lagos involves multinational corporations and the key stakeholders within the Lagos environment must find a way to ensure that there is a enabling environment for multinational corporations to exist, so that Lagos will continue to occupy the place of prominence within the international hub. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gero, for that beautiful presentation. I want to appreciate you for that presentation. Of course, we will have one or two suggestions to make. Of course, our responsibility at this panel is to assist the paper to be finished, be better than make it. So we'll be taking out those reactions after all the centers have done their own. Those who are also joining us online should also be prepared to also make contributions to what has been presented, and that is it thus far. So I will now be taking the center stage now to present my own paper. Because my name is once again my name is Faruq Idowu Boge. I'm presenting on Chinese textile companies in Nigeria. Test Industry Limited, 1971 to 2002. I have 7 slides here to present. The first one is about my abstracts. Of course, the place of multinational corporations in Nigerian economic development cannot be overemphasized. They have played a significant role in the economy of Lagos and in the economy of the entirety of Nigeria. And Lagos, since Lagos is the capital house, the commercial capital of Nigeria, we've seen Lagos housing many of these multinational. In fact, Lagos is the pace setter as far as the location of multinational corporations is concerned. The likes of John Wood, Miller's Brothers, and all of these multinational entities started their business in Lagos. In these multinational corporations, of course, before in the pre-colonial, in the colonial era, and in the 1960s, you don't see the active role played by the Chinese multinational corporation in this. But after the end of the Nigerian Civil War, started seeing an aggravated international relations between Nigeria and China. As a result of that, when China was going out, they go all out policy. Nigeria was one of the places that Chinese also find solace in it, and many of them, the Chinese corporations were also established in Lagos and in Nigeria. So the study is looking at a 50 years period between 1971 and 2020. And the reason why 1971 is tangential to this study is that 1971 was the year that 10 Nigeria Limited was established in Lagos. And by 1920, that organization seems not to be active. In fact, it was almost closed down by 1920, and that's why the study here is talking about. Then the study is to look at the prospects, problems, and challenges that has confronted Nigerian textile industry. Looking at it from the lenses of Lagos State and from the lenses of the Chinese multinational corporation, and taking 9 tests as a case study. So basically the methodology is historical, and I use historical and analytical framework to examine the work. So then the next slide talks about the introduction. And in my introduction, I was trying to justify the fact that Nigeria is one of the largest consumers of textile materials in the whole world. And the reason for this is just to Nigeria has a good number of people living in it, the largest population in Africa, and almost the largest black population in the world. So the population is there. And as a result of the fact that the population is there, the market to market all these textile materials are also there. Also, as a result of the demographic, Nigeria also has a working force. The workforce is also there to also engage, because textile industry is a labor, though there's use of machinery, but we also need the workforce to also work with it. And Nigeria population also is suitable for that. Apart from the demographic, we also have the material resources. And when we are talking about the material resources, the soil of land that are located in Nigeria are also very good for the germination of the major raw materials that are needed for textile industry. Cotton grow in abundance in Nigeria, and it's a very important source of also Nigeria has a landmass that large industrial estates. Of course, you cited a number of industrial estates that were created in Lagos. So the landmark was always there for localization of industry and industrial estates. Apart from that, we see that after in the pre-colonial era, Nigeria were ordinarily manufacturing what they were wearing. They were manufacturing, all our wares were manufacturing locally, concerning the intervention of the colonial masters. By the time we get the colonial economy, we start seeing the domination of the Nigerian textile industry by the multinational association, by the foreign countries. And this marks a long period of domination. Even after the colonial rule, we started seeing many textile industry calling to the Nigerian market to dominate the market. And as a result of that, there were impact on that. Apart from that, we also have the Chinese multinational corporations dominating virtually all sectors of the Nigerian economy. When we talk about the manufacturing industry, construction industry, and all of this industry. Now, as a result of the go all out policy of the Chinese regime, the Chinese was practicing state capitalism. And as a result of that, they needed to spread their tentacles to other parts of the world. And as a result of that, we were covering virtually all parts of the Nigerian economy, all sectors of the Nigerian economy. And the textile industry of Nigeria was never an exception to this. So that is what I do as a background in my introduction. Then what I do, the next slide talks about Nigerian textile industry in history. I try to historicize the Nigerian textile industry. And I divided my periods as a historian into three. I have the colonial period, the colonial period, and the post-colonial period. In the post-colonial period, I was looking what was the nature of Nigerian textile industry. As I have mentioned briefly in my previous words, is that it was an inward thing. Materials were bought locally. They were manufactured, they were woven locally, and they were also designed locally. So it was a local thing. In various Nigerian, let's take, for example, in Iseyin parts of the world, people were manufacturing their textiles. In fact, some of the textiles that were manufactured at that level were even exported to other parts of the world. Some of them were used as gifts to the Europeans who visited the Nigerian community at one point in time. So it was a local thing. We're doing in Yoruba land, we have two sort of looms that are used, although they are locally made looms, they are mechanically made looms. We have two forms of loom. We have the vertical looms and we have the horizontal looms. While the vertical looms were used by the female, the horizontal looms were used by the male folk in weaving clothes, and we are producing. Adire is known all over the world now, and it's one of the areas that Chinese are also making a venture into. It was a local product. It was produced in Nigeria, in Abeokuta. So we were producing all of these things. We were generating, because the land was fertile enough for the cultivation of cotton and all of these things. So we were cultivating cotton, and we're spinning the cotton into the necessary wood, and we're making the wood to also produce these materials as this period. So that was the nature really of the colonial Nigerian textile industry. It was locally made, and we used silks of tie and dye to also dye to design these things. Because, for example, they made some societies, their name reflect the kind of occupation they do. If you go to Ikorodu, if you look at the word of the root word of that word is Odu. That Odu is a sleeve which is used in the production of tie. It's a wood that is edible, but it can be used when it's soaking, it will produce some dye that are used in designing materials. So, in essence, during the colonial period, we are manufacturing what we were here. The textile industry, though, was using local methods, but it was enough to supply what Yoruba, Nigeria, and Lagosians needed at that period. So that is that about the pre-colonial period. Then we also have the colonial period. By the time we get to the colonial period, that is sort of the exploitative nature or the nature of the colonial era. We began to see the infiltration, the penetration of the foreign companies in the Nigerian textile industry. Initially, it was Japanese that was leading in the domination of the Nigerian textile industry. The Japanese were the one that were importing most of their textile materials into Nigeria. But the British authority, who were in Nigeria for economic exploitation, were not interested in that. And they began to introduce some policies in order to also gain access to their own multinational corporation. In 1933, in particular, they introduced the importation, textile importation in brackets, quotas, ordinance. And the essence of that ordinance is to stimulate, is to streamline the number of textile materials that have come into Nigeria from other areas. And it was in that regard that they were able to calm the Japanese who are making a lot of headways in the Nigerian textile industry. So they allowed the British textile companies, firms, to also begin to build it. But they were not doing it alone. It was not a monopoly. It was an oligopoly situation, whereby the British take the lead, then other multinational corporations from Germany, from Japan, were also making they are also trading their marks in the Nigerian textile areas. And that is what was going on. So in the colonial era, it laid the foundation of the domination of the Nigerian textile industry. And by that time, we started seeing that marked the origin of this, even this second-hand clothes, the Akube clothes and what have you. Because the European initially, what they were importing to Nigeria were solid materials. But at the point in time, they began to also introduce, to import the Akube stuff into Nigeria. One of those factors that gave them the edge was the absence of capital. Many of the local merchants who wanted to get engaged in this industry were not able to do that because they don't have enough capital. The banks that were in the system we are only providing capital, credit facilities to the British because they believe they are serious. They believe that the Nigerians, the Lagosians were not serious. You know, the indigenous merchants were not serious enough. They are too social party oriented, and we don't want to give them the credit. So the credit facilities that was given to this set of people assisted them in accumulating the textile sector or the textile industry in Nigeria. Then we now come to the post-colonial period. In the post-colonial period, what was laid down in the colonial period was continuing. Of course, we know that when Nigeria resumed from independence, what Nigeria was trying to do was now to break the genes of economic domination by the colonial powers. And we started introducing a series of development policies. The first development plan, the first one was to allow Nigeria to take off industrially, and it was meant to also allow all these industries to grow. They were agro-allied industries, but at least there was the intention to diversify the economy. In this regard, many of the foreign multinational corporations were also taking advantage of this and development at that time. Until the 1970s, when Nigeria was practicing economic nationalism and we have indigenization, indigenization policy. The essence of this indigenization policy was to bring Nigeria to the driver's seat of the economy. And many Nigerians were also, many of the foreign multinational corporations were affected by this growth. It was in this period that the Chinese also began to maintain steady relations with Nigeria. Prior to the era of the Civil War, in fact, during the Civil War, the Chinese played the minor role in the fracas that happened between the federal government and the Biafra house. But after that war ended, the situation was normalized, and the Chinese began to have inroads into the Nigerian economy, and as a result of that, began to establish industries, particularly textile industry in various parts of Nigeria. We have various of them, but our own concern in this, my own concern in this study is the Nigeria industry. So I will now look at my next slide talks about the Nigeria Limited, like the Nigeria Limited. Nigeria Limited. Of course, Nigeria Limited was an industry. It was owned by a Chinese. Name is Ching Ming. It was a Chinese Ching Ming who established that company, and that company was established in 1971, and it was established in Ibeshe, particularly the Ibeshe area of Ikurudu. Ikurudu is one of the suburbs, one of the local governments in Lagos State, and that's why we are situated within Lagos State. That's the company has the land mass of that company is about 150 acres of land that company has. And apart from that, the branches of the company later extended to some states in Nigeria. Kaduna State was one of them, Katsina State was one of them, and Samara was one of the states that the company later established branches. Apart from that, that company was the largest, and still is the largest textile industry in the whole of Africa. When that company was to be established, the targets, they have the market target. They wanted to dominate the entire West African region and the Central African region. So the orientation was beyond Lagos, was beyond Nigeria, cut across West Africa and Central Africa. They wanted to sell their goods into this area, and that's target. So apart from that, they also have a large workforce. A large workforce about 2020, around the year 2020, when the industry was still at its peak. It was having about 3,500 workforce. Shows it was taking large number of Nigerians who are working with it. It engaged in a lot of products. Part of its product is synthetic fiber, filament manufacturing, spinning, weaving, real wax printing, dyeing, and all of these are the areas that, in fact, the Ankara stuff that were produced by that company used to be the most quality Ankara in Nigeria at the point in time. So they were churning out series of textile materials, and these textile materials were used in Nigeria and even beyond Nigeria. So that's what the company was engaging. But in 2017, the company unfortunately lost his founder, Chai Chi-Ming, and he died, and as a result of that, there were issues. Then the next slide is to look at what are the prospects and challenges of prospects, problems, and challenges of marketers industrial limited in industries limited in India. Prospects, we have series of prospects, I mean, in terms of advantages that are derived from the existence of that company in Lagos, in Nigeria. One of those things is foreign direct investment. Marketers, Nigeria, marketers industry, Nigeria has given the Nigerian opportunity of foreign direct investment. China is Chinese coming to Nigeria to come and invest in Nigeria. Come with a lot of capital, a lot of money, and a lot of resources to invest in the Nigerian economy. As a result of that investment, it triggered the revenue within Lagos, the revenue within Nigeria. So foreign direct investment was one of the advantages that is derivable from the existence of marketers in Nigeria. Apart from that, we also have technical transfer, technology transfer. Technology transfer was also one of the advantages that the existence of marketers industry limited has provided for Nigeria. And what we mean by that is that many of the machineries that were used in order to move away from the initial indigenous technologies that were used in the pre-colonial period, that's why I started seeing the introduction of machinery, because that is part of industrialization. The intent of industrialization is to produce a mass, and if you must produce a mass, you must use certain machineries. There were machineries that were used in the area of filament. There were machineries that were used in the area of spinning. It's not like the one we use, the local one that we use, that you can use several days before you can produce a textile material. This one you can produce series of thousands, millions of special material, because so these machineries were technology that were transferred to Nigeria. And as a result of that, some Nigerians, indigenous Nigerians began to learn from these machineries that were transferred. So transfer of technology is one of the advantages that this industry has brought to Nigeria. And another advantage is the employment side of it. Many Nigerians have been employed by this industry. When I got to the field, and I asked those who are living in that community, in the community where the industry was located, they narrated series of stories about how secondary school labor within the entire community look towards graduating and getting employed within their campus. They are always sure about that once they finish their studies, they have one place. If they don't get employment anyway, they know that test is free. So it's an employment spinning industry. And many Nigeria, we have many of them that are really doing fine. Many of them built their house on the money they realized. I got information from them that money they were able to gather from my campus without doing any other thing. They were able to build their own house, establish their own founder, dealing with that. So that industry provided a long employment opportunity to Nigerians, to the Goshen, and to those people living within the community. Apart from that, we also have the fact that economic development, the existence of languages industry limited also assisted in economic growth of Lagos. The company pays tax to the cost of the government and then and contribute to the economic development of the states. Are you getting it? So that's one of this. Apart from that, you also have the issue of socio-economic development and you also have the issue of organization. And I'll take organization. That area that the industry was located used to be a very remote area of the states. But because there was that location, it drove a lot of people into that area. We started seeing houses coming up, coming on board, started seeing roofs, started seeing electricity, started seeing water infrastructure in that area. That's urbanization. Turning a rural area to urbanization. That was one of the SAC, all of the importance of the establishment of that area. Apart from that, we also have the issue of socio-economic development. Many of the landlords that build their house in that area, they got because at the point in time that's also the cost of the freedom should. In fact, it was not only the indigenous people that were employed in that area. We also have non-indigenous, Igbo people, outside people that were doing one work or the other in the park. And as a result of that, many of them get to rent house to establish their family. When they rent house, the landlord who are in that area begin to also reap some economic benefits from it. Those who are selling market in that area also begin to reap some economic benefits. And those are the economic aspect of the advantage of that industry in that area. Apart from that, we now have the problems that confronted that company particularly, all the problems that emanate from the existence of that company. What are these problems? One of them is labor relation issues. It has been asserted that that company gives undue advantage to the Chinese employees, while the indigenous people who were not taken care of, their welfare is not taken care of. The expatriates were given on the advantage because they were simply because they were expatriates, they were foreigners and Chinese. So that labor relations was one of the factors that led to the collapse of people in it. Was the workers continued to clamor for their welfare package to be improved upon. Another one is like what you have said is environmental concerns. There were a series of environmental issues, air pollution, dropping releasing of chemical waste into the water and contaminating the water of people was part of the environmental issues that occur from these issues. So we have the environmental concern. Then another thing is that many of the local industries owned by indigenous persons, we have some indigenous merchants that also want to go into the textile industry. Many of their industries were built as a result of the establishment of these industries in that place. So those were the problems that emanated from the existence of what were the challenges that confronted that industry in itself? What were the challenges that by the company now is not producing, it's not manufacturing now, just like some other Nigerian textile industry. Why did that happen? Why did they have to stop production in 2020? And that's why my study stopped at 2020. But at 2020, they have stopped production in the last 5 years. One of the reasons why that occurred was because Nigeria tend to do mono economy. Nigeria tend to make degree of mono economy. Once we dictated oil, it started to neglect other sectors of the economy. Too much concentration. The other sectors of the economy were just giving lip service. They were just giving lip service. They put money into it, the money will not reach down the rate. So that also affected the general textile industry in Nigeria and the Then another factor that also led to the collapse of this industry was the massive importation of cheap textile materials from other parts of the world, particularly people from China. So the local production could not continue because there was influx of importation of cheap textile materials, and it was affecting all the local thing you can do is also to produce sheep. But they can't produce sheep because of the cost of production. And one of the sources of production was this power shortage here and there. Of course, we have mentioned at the point in time now the road leading to that industry are being constructed. It's now perfect. Do you get it now? But it is when it is perfect that the industry is not working. When the industry was at its peak, the road leading to that area was in very bad shape. So it was difficult for them to move in raw materials. The reason why that industry was located in that area was that area was very close to a port. And they believe that the raw materials that could not be gotten from Nigeria could easily be moved into that industry because it was closer to it. But when they leave the port is located at Ipakudu. The port is located at the Ipakudu area of but between moving that industry to the practice, the roads were never shipped. And that was a major constraint to the industry and led to eventual government policies were also not consistent. There's policies somersault here and there. A certain amount of money devoted for the designation of textile industry. It should not get to where it's supposed to get to. And this also affected the performance of the industry. Then another problem that is also peculiar to Nigerians was the problem of continuity. When the father died, he gave the daughter Shaimi also took over the management of the industry from the father. But she did not manage it for 3 years. The father died in 2017, though the industry was sickening at that time the guy was dying. But you have and that is one of the problems of family business all over. The problem of continuing from where their father started is always the problem it has been insurance. So this also affected Nigerians. But when the lady came on board, started rolling out series of policies that were against the interests of the workers. And it started this consistent revolt, protest, and industrial action. And it's also contributed to restricting the performance of the industry. So that is that about that. Then my next slide is about my conclusion. So my conclusion is that actually Nigerians has contributed to the Nigerian textile industry. That they know how it was one of the leading and the giants in the industry at a particular point in time. Also, Nigeria needs, I'm not saying this as a recommendation, Nigeria needs to diversify the economy. An economy that has a huge population, a huge market that you need to look at these things, some of these things that are imported to be localized. Even if multinational corporations are going to perform, let them come here to be producing. It shouldn't be importation. Of course, we know the issue about balance of payment. If we import too much, our balance of payment will never be balanced. So we need to either they are going to come here to be producing, the government must ensure that the economy is diversified. And one of the areas that I wish we can diversify, because there is no way you know where it looks today. It's an industry that Nigeria can light upon and also. Then another thing is accommodation is that industry is dead now. It's dead. What is government doing about that 150 acres of land that is flying farming? How do the government do it? The government want to take it over, or the government want to encourage one of the Nigerian seasoned entrepreneurs to also go into this. You can encourage Dangote, you can encourage the likes of Smith to also take this kind of industry and integrate so that we can produce locally and indeed to meet up with some of our economic needs. Thank you. I don't know if I have spent more than my time, but I think I am sharing. I can see the fight. Thank you for listening to this. So thank you. So Boge has presented his own. He also note whatever you want to do. He will take our suggestion to assist. We are not criticizing, we are not rubbishing any paper here. We just want to say something that will make the paper to be better than the way it is currently. So thank you very much. We now go to Mrs. or Miss Omolara Olufemi, who will be talking to us on British multinationals for the Nigerian pharmaceutical industry and May and Baker Nigerian PLC. You are welcome.
All right, the topic says British multinationals in Nigeria's pharmaceutical industry. First study May and Baker Nigerian PLC. Good morning, everyone. My name is Idowu. So the introduction. British multinationals arrived in 1807, and that was the end of slave trade in Africa. So the British were interested in Nigeria because of new markets, cheap labor, raw materials, and other things. Because after the end of slave trade, they needed other things for them to be able for them to have an economic stand in their own area. Then examples of British multinationals, we have Shell, BP, we have Unilever, we have Coca-Cola, we have MTN, we have May and Baker as well. Then May and Baker overview. So the overview, so May and Baker started or was founded in 1944, specifically September 4. That was when May and Baker started in Nigeria. And May and Baker was first of all based in UK, meaning that they worked with UK. So Nigeria was under UK. That was in 1839. But the breakaway started between 1979. So Nigeria became an independent state. So they produced their own pharmaceutical industry and other breakaways. So May and Baker is not just basically on drugs or vaccines alone. They also work on, or they also produce beverages like baby water. They also produce other things like hand sanitizer and other things for them. So May and Baker is actually located at Ikeja, Lagos, Nigeria. And the present CEO of May and Baker is Mr. Patrick Aja. So Mr. Patrick Aja actually was made the CEO in 2001. So since then, they've had a great impact even to the community and every areas in Nigeria. Then let's look at the achievements and impacts of May and Baker. So one of the notable achievements for May and Baker they have ISO 9001 2015 certified. Then you also have World Health Organization qualified vaccine facility, meaning that for any of their facilities has to be certified with WHO, that's World Health Organization. Then we have major players in health and food sectors. Okay, some of the major players in health, we have Amazon, pharmaceutical industry, we have 15 pharmaceutical industry, and other ones. Then market leader in Nigeria's pharmaceutical space. So May and Baker, they became the market leader. They were the one leading markets in Nigeria because they produce quality goods. May and Baker would stand their ground in everything. There is a lot of competition how to stand with those people that produce subsidiary goods. It's called, they are called subsidiary goods, that's fake products that produce fake jobs. So May and Baker stood their ground to produce quality goods in Nigeria. So now what is MSC? That's Multinational Corporation in Nigeria. MSC is actually a direct investment that values their own profits. So they establish various companies in different areas, even overseas, for their own benefits. So they are not after the benefits of that particular nation is doing to or in Nigeria. They're actually after their own benefits. That's MNC. Then export capital, technology, and expertise. Their goals are global expansion and mutual, often biased benefits. Yes, their goal is actually having a large a large company in different localities, but they actually biased. They wanted all of its profits for themselves and not for the people that they are going there to help or to use their own produce to get something. So their benefits actually goes on what they want to achieve from that area. And Nigeria is a place that's full of natural resources like palm oil. It's very prominent in Nigeria. We also have that. We have a lot of them in Nigeria. Then let's look at the negative impacts of MNCs. Part A, environmental damage. So some of negative impacts that we wrote about environmental damage in terms of our farmland, pollution in every areas. So these are part of damages that is brought to Nigeria. Then economic losses. So for instance, in 2006, it was recorded that 2.456 trillion was lost due to the impact of MSCs in Nigeria. Then we also have profit centers. They prioritize their profit centers with them. So whatever they get, whatever profits they get, is for them, not for Nigeria. It's for them. So they work for their own profits. Then negative impact of MNCs. Technological backwardness. So there was technological backwardness in Nigeria because in Nigeria, so there is a bit of technology, but not well pronounced. So this brought negative parts on their own edge. Then dependency on foreign tech. So they depend on foreign technology, going there to get something valuable that they can use to produce something good. All right. So we also have job losses, then low local capacity. So it's ended into people having unemployment and low local capacity. Then political interference, bribery. So there's also bribery and political interference that policies are trying to come in between them, that this and this that they are doing is not right, and it's actually making the country to go down gradually. Then we also have salary gap. So for those that are experts from them, they are being paid more than Nigerians. So people that work with them that are their own in their own community, they pay them more than people in Nigeria. For people in Nigeria, because they are blacks, they feel that these people they can actually work very hard, but they don't give them a lot of payments. So now, UK-Nigeria pharmaceutical relationship. So let's look at their relationship as UK and Nigeria pharmaceuticals. As I said earlier, UK began to form ties with Nigeria since 1839. But the break away started between 1979. That was when Nigeria began to have this withdrawal from them, and Nigeria became a stable company on its own to produce goods. Now, we have the long colonial and post-colonial sides. Key firms, we have Shaw, we have Lumbrica, we have Prisons. We also have pre-1960, every outset dependence. So in 1960, there was this every outset in Nigeria, meaning that due to the independent Nigeria, it made Nigeria to be self-independent, to work on our own technology, to work on our own industry, in order to grow our economy. Then 2014, 75% of jobs imported. So these are some of the things that is noted. So from 2014, there was a lot of jobs that were imported, and because Nigeria had formed a ties with UK, so all the produce gotten here in Nigeria has to be brought from UK in order to work on our own produce. So there was this full dependency on UK for the survival of Africa. So we have Nigerian farm challenges. So let's look at the challenges of the pharmaceutical industry. We have high production costs. So a lot of goods that were taken from UK because they depend on subsidiary goods for the raw materials. So the cost of the jobs of goods has to be high in order to meet the economy, in order to contain and to have a consistency in that company. Then we also have inflation increases job prices. So the inflation that we had, even presently, is still ongoing. So the inflation commodities, both in the pharmaceutical industry and other areas, the inflation has actually made things to be very high. So we also have Nigerian farm challenges, infrastructural issues, power, and all of that. So let me quickly run down through the challenges of May and Beta, and then I'll move to conclusion. So challenges of May and Beta, we have produce and products quality under NAFTA standards. So they have challenge of NAFTA, because any goods that needs to be or any drugs that needs to be published has to go through NAFTA. So if the drug is not regularized on NAFTA, it's not going to be published to the country. Then we also have foreign exchange issues. So there are issues with foreign exchange, fake drug and all of that. Their contribution to the society. May America made a notable contribution in society. For instance, educational sponsorship. So they sponsor some students who are not students that don't have opportunity to go to school. So they sponsor them to go to university. They pay all their bills and all school fees. Then they also support police officials for safety, like they provided first aid box for the police people in order for them to work effectively. Then environmental partnership, people that clean the environment, so they, in fact, when you go around the Keja, they have the uniform for May and Beta, fitting for their chests, that people that are working for them, and they pay them personally. May and Beta sponsor their payments. Then they also have R&D, meaning with local institutions, that means research and development. So they work on research and development with local institutions that they will not continue to depend on UK but outside the world. Before I leave here, I would like to recommend a job. This job is actually produced by May and Beta logo. This is ibuprofen, used majorly for when the child and adults having fever or having